All right, here we are, episode one of Roundtable Dolphins podcast. It's good to have people that know Dolphins football, but I think it's even better to kind of have your enemies here. I got my boy John Robinson, former D1 collegiate football player and a longtime fan of the New York Jets. So
Yes.
we're going to be talking all about Dolphins football, some what ifs, and also previewing the game. How you doing, John?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to be here, James. I appreciate you for having me on.
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about the upcoming game. Let's preview the game for Sunday. The Dolphins are taking on the Jets. Long-standing rivalry. We know exactly what this is. We know exactly what happens. We are
Right.
always going after one another every single time we play in season. But this time it's a little bit different because the Jets, not so great. The
Right.
Dolphins are kind of on the rise here.
Right.
It's going to be a huge divisional matchup. And honestly, I'm a little worried.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried because the Jets are starting to come alive. They're what, 3-2 in their last five games?
Mhm.
Yeah, they beat the Browns. Yeah, they beat a kind of lower teams, but still, they're still tough. You guys might
Yep.
have gotten rid of some defensive players. Quentin Williams is gone. You got rid
Yep.
of Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner's not hurt with the Colts, but still,
Yep.
the Jets are the Jets.
So I think right now, if this game was taking place, I'd say in October, I think it would be a much favorable matchup for the Dolphins. The Jets right now, over the last, I would say in November, are playing some pretty inspired football. And you can see how Aaron Glenn's culture and philosophy is starting to rub off on the atmosphere with this football team. The move to bench Justin Fields and bring in Tyrod Taylor, I think it was a good move for them. Justin Fields, things just didn't work. You know what I'm saying? I think he's a talented guy in terms of like what his God-given tools are, but it just things don't always work out. Maybe the system isn't right. Maybe he's just not an NFL starter, and that's just something that has to be realized. And so I think for Aaron Glenn, in order to not lose his locker room, he made a move that makes a lot of sense. And I think for the average fan, people most believe that, well, they're probably tanking the year. You traded Quentin Williams, you got rid of Sauce Gardner. There were questions are they're going to try to see what Garrett Wilson's value is. And I just think for players like Sauce and Quentin, their value is more catered to a team prepared to win. I don't think if the Jets are 9 wins into the season, even 7 wins into the season, those players would still be on the team because your outlook for the playoffs might be in the hunt. But right now, they have 3 wins in November. I think the "Who Want to Fly with Them Jets" movement is really sparking this team. The defense has played better. The offense has been great. I think, well, not great, but better, sustainable. I mean, from a standpoint of Adonai Mitchell, John Mechie, I think you finally added some depth into that wide receiver room. I think you have the opportunity to draft a guy like Carnell Tate in this upcoming draft. And you have Garrett Wilson, which looks like a pretty bona fide wide receiver room. And so I think this game, because it's a division rivalry, is going to come down to the wire. As the fan, I'm going to take the New York Jets in an upset. But I don't think if they win the game, it'd be an upset. I really feel like the Dolphins are getting hot, but also the Jets are finding their stride too. They're not going to go to the playoffs, but they're not a team that seems like they're looking to lose football games. They want to win. Their coach wants to win. And I think the average fan sometimes forget that like there's players in that locker room, human beings in that locker room. Nobody likes to just be a loser. So when people talk about tanking and things like that, that's a managerial move. That's upper band things that are out of their control. But it's not going to be a thing that the players won. So I think it's going to be a great matchup. I'm going to take the Jets to win by 3. Um, and it's going to be a good football game, 100%.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, even regardless of, getting rid of players, and even regardless of the situation, the record right now the Jets have, they're always a dangerous opponents for the
Right,
Dolphins, period, because it's a divisional game. But
right,
now, the Dolphins are three in a with three wins in a row. They're 5-7. They're in the playoff conversation, maybe low, but they're still there. If the Dolphins win out, go 10-7, they have a really strong chance of potentially being in the playoffs. So, what better way for the Jets to be like, screw that, we're going to be season ruiner, and we're just going to ruin it for the Dolphins? Because chances are, when you go from 10-7 to 9-8, you're
right.
probably not going to make the playoffs, especially with this stacked AFC. I mean, things are going up and down, but the current wild card teams are so much better than the teams that are chasing a playoff berth that there's no room for error at this point. And so the Jets can come out hot, take down the Dolphins, and then kind of ruin the season, which is they've done it before. We've done it to them, vice versa. It happens. And the one thing that I'm really worried about is, yeah, the Dolphins defense has come alive in recent weeks. It's been a lot stronger, especially the run defense. But Brees Hall still worries me. Like that guy can rifle off 40 yards on the ground like it's nobody's business. And, if he can get loose, and the thing with the Dolphins is, once it starts to steamroll, once it starts to snowball, where people are just getting that chunk yardage, teams will figure that out and they'll keep pounding the ball. And that's the biggest thing that I'm worried about is, with Brees Hall, especially and especially because he's still viable in the passing game too. Like you can't really account for what he may or may not do any given play. So that's the thing I'm really most concerned about is how are we gonna contain Brees Hall? Because like you said, regardless, like there's still playmakers. I don't even know, is Justin Fields gonna start? Are they starting Tyrod Taylor? Either way, both are also mobile quarterbacks that also possesses a bigger problem. Obviously, Justin Fields is a little bit more mobile, but still, it's still a big concern for the Dolphins for sure.
Yeah, ultimately, the Jets' offensive line is a lot better than it's been in over the last few years. And I also feel like that's why they decided to bench Justin Fields because it's easier to assess when there are some foundational things in place where somebody can thrive in this. And that's why I don't think Justin Fields will be the starter. I'm sure it'll be Tyrod Taylor just because the offense has just looked more palatable over the times that he has started for us this season. Um, and so for Brees Hall, if this Jets offensive line comes to play, Brees Hall is that X factor. And then the other part is this is the first time like Adonai Mitchell and John Mechie are in roles where they're going to be the featured receivers. And despite the first game where Adonai Mitchell has some drops that he probably wishes he can get back, he creates really a lot of separation. And I think that's the one thing that stands out to me about him on tape is his ability to separate from DBs. And I think John Mechie is going to be a reliable slot receiver for us for the foreseeable future. So I think there are the tools in place for the Jets to put together the potential upset bid. For the Dolphins, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not really the biggest Tua Tagovailoa fan. I just don't think he's that great. I think he's very limited for the money that he's made and what he's asked to be. When you're a $50 million quarterback, James, there's an expectation that you'll be able to do things despite every resource in the building not maybe being there for you that may not have all your receivers. You might not have the best defense this year. You might not have all these running backs. And the difference is for Tua Tagovailoa, he legitimately has weapons and is underperformed. You have Tariq Hill, but despite before the injury, you have Jalen Waddle, you have Devon A-Chain, probably the fastest running back in the league, not named Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, you have an offensive genius in Mike McDaniel, who's really helped you make this money. He's really put you in the best possible situation. And so Tua Tagovailoa for me is just like, I think he's a more of a backup level quarterback. I don't think he is a premier starter. I don't think he's a guy who's going to elevate a team to a playoffs or a Super Bowl victory. And I think that's why the Dolphins retain Mike McDaniel because James, they really see that. I don't think the coaches are a problem.
Yeah, yeah.
The reality is you got to go to Buffalo and win. You got to go to New England and win.
Yeah, yeah. I
You do
mean,
high level.
speaking of that, speaking of going into Buffalo win, like the Dolphins just did that
Yeah.
30-13 victory right there, huge, but then they kind of almost ruin it with the Commanders going to overtime win 16-13 and the Saints 21-17. Like these are really close victories they just had, and now you're going into MetLife Stadium to play the Jets in what could be a season ruiner, as I said before. So again, all these factors is what I'm worried about for the Dolphins in the sense of like, can they rise to the occasion? I wanted to finish up this bit about the game preview, and then we'll get more into Tua Tagovailoa because I got thoughts too on that as well. You hit the nail on the head for a lot of things, but the main thing is, like you said, the Dolphins do have one of the best and fastest running backs in the league in Devon Achane, who can also catch the ball as well. So it's like, he's been on a tear. He's been on a tear. He got 120 yards against the excuse me, he got 120 against Washington. He got 134 against New Orleans, and then he's got 174 against Buffalo. So he's just been on a tear. He's been able to just go go go. And oddly enough, Mike McDaniel, who categorically would abandon the run, is now leaning on the run. And that's the biggest factor for me is if you lean on the run and you can get Ollie Gordon in there as well, because he's been getting some good runs in there. And especially Achan, if he can, the Jets don't have the best run defense right now. They're tightening things up, but lean on that. If they can lean on that, I still think it's going to be a very close win. I'm going to take the Dolphins by 3 as well. That's just my opinion. Let's see what happens. But let's just jump right into the Tua aspect of things and why that's also one of my big worries because he's not playing the Tua brand of football right now. It's very odd to see him kind of stuck in the mud. One of the things that I'm noticing week after week is his escapability has melted away for some reason. He talked about he needed to work on his footwork, and that's been like the biggest thing for him, not being able to escape being sacked, taking costly sacks. But it's more so than that. I don't know. It's very weird. He talked about his hip. He talked about knees earlier on in the season, and it appears those things might be affecting him a lot more than people really realize because he's standing there stoic and getting hit. Whereas he would at least pull a little move, get under the defensive end, the linebacker, whoever's coming after him, and be able to throw that ball because he had one of the fastest releases in the NFL. But things are just a little odd right now. Things are a little off, and it's very concerning because he is a major reason why these recent victories have been so close. His turnovers are starting to be very, very troublesome. And earlier on in the season, he got offended because a reporter talked about him turning the ball over in bunches, and that really got to him. And he was like, "Bunches? That's crazy." But when you look at it, it's like, okay, well, they're kind of in bunches. Week one, he had 2 interceptions. We go to the Chargers game, he had 3. We go to the Browns game, he had 3. We go Buffalo, he had 2. So it's like you can't really say that's not happening with him. You can't really say like, hey, they're not happening in bunches because they kind of are. And Tua is just he's off. He's having a career worst passer rating right now, which is in the 80s, 85 point. Let me look that up really quick. 85.9, which is his worst. His rookie season was 87.1. Right now, 85.9, 14 interceptions. He leads the league. 17 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. There's clearly something wrong. There's clearly something going on with him. And you're right. They just paid him a huge amount of money. They just gave him that huge extension. And for some reason, he's not playing up to that.
Right.
There's something maybe behind the scenes going on with him. I don't know what it is. Like I said, maybe it's the injuries, maybe it's the concern for his well-being from the concussions. Maybe that's finally all catching up to him. Maybe he's worried about, okay, so these guys are coming at me instead of trying to do a move where I get pulled and slammed to the ground, resulting in a concussion that we've seen before. Maybe he just goes, I'm just going to take the hit and bundle up because that's honestly the times when he doesn't get hurt the most. When he tries to do a move and they go for sometimes it's a hip drop tackle, which we know is illegal, but he gets spun around and gets slammed on the ground, concussion. It's
Yeah.
happened before. We've seen it happen before, and it's a little troublesome. There's something going
Yeah.
on with him, and that's the biggest thing. If the Jets defense can get after him and can get him throwing costly interceptions, making those bonehead throws downfield, it's going to be a nightmare day. In which case, like I said, the Dolphins will then fall to 5-8 on the season, and they can almost all but guarantee their playoff hopes are dead in the water.
Yeah. So the thing about Tua is, and this is why this season is so alarming, is Tua's already been a limited athlete coming out of college. Nobody thought he was going to be some elite dual threat quarterback in the league. The things that got Tua drafted was accuracy, ball placement, timing, being able to layer throws, being able to throw into tight windows. The things that you need to be to be able to have any type of success as an NFL quarterback. You have to remember there were still people that looked at Tua as QB1
Mhm.
because of how elite his accuracy was coming out of Alabama. But I think his mobility has always been limited, James. I mean, I think people forget this guy pretty much dislocated his hip
Yeah,
at Alabama,
yeah.
and that really messed him up. I think people don't realize. in terms of his what he was mobile when he first got to Alabama versus who he's become athletically due to those injuries. He's had some lower extremity injuries that really affect him. Remember, he got an ankle surgery while in season
Yeah,
at Alabama. So
yeah,
he's come in with these lower extremity injuries, but the accuracy, the talent, and with the arm, it was all there. So it wasn't undeniable that this guy was still a first round level quarterback. But when you're not a great athlete, you're already undersized quarterback. You can't be 17 and 14
no,
touchdown and QB. You have a QBR
no,
right now. He's 28th in the league at QBR with 40. I mean, for a guy who has so many physical limiters, what you have up top, your ability to be accurate and execute offense, that's what's going to make you great. And when you aren't doing that, the Dolphins win football games despite you. I don't think they're winning because of you.
no.
And when you're a $50 million a year quarterback, you need to be a part of the why they're winning these football games. And it is funny. You mentioned it before. They are leaning heavy on Devon A-Chain, but they should. He's their best offensive player. He
Yep.
can beat you in the pass game. He can beat you in the run game. He can hit his head on the goalpost from one seam. He is that electric out of the backfield. And you're having to take some of this pressure off of Tua. And the reason why the Dolphins aren't going to fire Mike McDaniel is because everybody can see it. And look, I don't take personal jabs at players. So this is not really a personal jab at Tua, the human being. He's probably a great guy. But I do think at times on the podium, he's so defensive that to me, it almost comes off as like you're out of touch with how you're performing.
Yeah, a
And
little
this
bit
is the
lacking self-awareness
of
and
self, yeah, like there's a lack of a bit of self-awareness because how you're speaking to the media is like it's almost like you're unaware of like how bad you've looked. You know, when people with their eyes are seeing you play football, you don't look great. And you are throwing picks in bunches. That's why you have 14. You've only played, what is it, 12 games in the season so far?
yeah, 12 games. Yep.
13? Like, you have 14 picks. Right now, you have more picks than games played. You
Yep.
get what I'm saying? So
Yep.
that is but that means you've had to have multiple games where you've thrown multiple interceptions. So in terms of Tua Tagovailoa, like I could see a scenario where the Miami Dolphins make a call to Cleveland and see if Deshaun Watson can come play quarterback for them. I don't
Um,
think there's, it's not out of the realm of possibility. How interested are you in Mac Jones? How interested are you in, maybe even want to bring a Tyler Bajan out of Caleb Williams back up. There's a lot of people who have a lot of high regard for his ability to play quarterback. Um, or you might be interested in drafting a guy. Maybe you keep Tua and you go get a Lenore Sellers and you just build Lenore Sellers in development and you let Tua does what he does. So when I look at the whole Miami Dolphins situation, I think their biggest limiter to me has always been Tua. I think because of the numbers and the high powered offense, people got away from that. I think Tua has always been the limiting factor for this Dolphins offense. But the thing is, James, because Mike McDaniels is such a good play caller, he masks a lot of this stuff. It's very similar to me, and this is not to bring somebody else into this, but it's to me very similar to Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy, if you looked in the games he's played this year, he hasn't looked like himself. And I think the average athlete that he is, the average arm strength, he's a little bit better athlete than Tua, but he also has physical limiters that are very much masked by the genius play caller and the foundation that's already laid around him. And Tua, the foundation is there, and your inability to excel in it, you don't he to me doesn't have enough leeway to play the way he's played.
no, yeah, I agree with that. Him coming up with Mike McDaniel, obviously, like 2022, he led the league in completion percentage. Sorry, in 2024, he led the league in 2023 in passing yards, and he was electric. But
Right.
everyone kind of seemed to figure out like if you ruffle his feathers, he's prone to making mistakes. And he also had the injuries. He had the multiple concussions and everything going on with that. So you're right. This leads into Mike McDaniel, as you briefly touched on before, and how he's connected to Tua. If the Dolphins keep Tua, or they were to cut him pre June 1st, he triggers a $99.2 million
Right.
cap hit, which would be a record in the NFL. So interestingly, I agree, and I think that's the biggest factor of why Mike McDaniel is probably going to be sticking around. A new
Right.
report came out from ESPN's Dan Graziano, which I did write about, which basically said there's multiple people in the NFL that believe that Mike McDaniel is going to stay on as the team's head coach. And I think the biggest reason for that is Tua. Everybody seems to understand, or everybody clues into the fact that Tua is only successful with Mike McDaniel. I don't know if you can take Tua and put him into any other situation and he would be as successful because Mike McDaniel has found a way, like you said, to mask those limiting abilities, but also make him the best version of himself. The issue now is that he is making mistakes. And so, regardless of the fact that they are leaning on Devon Achane as they should, now they have to lean more on him because Tua's not playing a good brand of football. So, I think it makes sense that they are going to keep Mike McDaniel. They got blown out by the Ravens. They were 2-7. They got rid of Chris Greer. They got rid of longtime general manager Chris Greer, who had 20 years in the Dolphins organization. He was in charge of college scouting, or he was assistant director, became director, and then became general manager. And even though it's a little bit unfair to kind of put this all on him, a big portion of the Dolphins issues is because of Chris Greer. He's never been the best talent evaluator, and that's been proven on the field with the fact that you have a injury prone quarterback that is limited when he is under duress, even more so than other quarterbacks, or rather he makes more mistakes. That being said, the biggest issue that the Dolphins should have been addressing that they haven't done in multiple seasons is the offensive line. And still, they went and got Jonah. He's a rookie. They have Patrick Paul, who's working out, who was a draft last year. Fantastic. Those two guys. Jonah's been on the rise. He had a really rough start, but then they have Austin Jackson who just came back. They have a couple others. Aaron Brewer, I believe, is still hurt. There's a couple others on the offensive line that are still hurt. And look, like Tua took 4 sacks in that Saints game and threw two interceptions, I believe. And the proof is in the pudding. Like if he's constantly under duress, especially now, like I said, there's something wrong with him, or at least in my opinion, I see
Yeah.
something off with him. And
Limitation, mobility.
exactly. So, they get rid of Chris Greer. They're going to bring in a brand new general manager, and the reports have indicated that it's a really big job. That a lot of people are going to be jumping at it, and great. They also got rid of 2 other personnel people
Mhm.
that were tied to previous regimes. The
Right.
biggest thing for the Dolphins with Stephen Ross is he's loyal to a fault, which is why
Right.
I'm a little concerned with them keeping Mike McDaniel. Don't get me wrong. I like Mike McDaniel. I think he's a really good offensive mind. I think he's done really good stuff with the Dolphins, but I'm concerned about doing a soft reset. I'm
Right.
concerned that they're doing a half measure because
Mhm.
they got rid of Greer, but they keep McDaniel. So, you know what I mean? Is this really going to be the move
Well,
that's going to propel them forward, or is it going to screw them
mhm.
and keep them right where they are?
So it's funny that you brought up the GM's like loyalty to a fault, because one of the reasons why Tua is still your quarterback and was drafted to be your quarterback is because your owner did not want Justin Herbert.
Hmm.
His guy was Tua. I think people forget. You remember the whole tank for Tua?
Yeah, oh yeah, I
It was
remember.
the whole craze. You know what I'm saying? It was tank for Tua. Like the
Tank for
GM for
Tua,
the
tank for Tua.
offense pretty much said, "We Brian Flores. I don't care what you want.
Yep.
You will draft that quarterback from the University of Alabama." And
Hmm.
he did. And so I agree. Like usually when the GM goes, the head coach goes, boom. But the thing is, you got to look at it this way. You fire Mike McDaniel, James, he's going to be the hottest name for an offensive coordinator role
100%.
in the
100%.
league.
Yep.
And you don't want to be in a situation where he's the OC for a team in your division or a team in the AFC, because he is an offensive. I think he is what you call an offensive guru. He's from that Shanahan coaching tree.
Yeah.
Seen a lot of football, and I also think for if you're going to bring in a new quarterback, I would be very fine with them bringing in the quarterback to go in a Mike McDaniel's offensive system.
Mm.
And I think from a foundational standpoint there, I think it is hard for you to let that out the building, especially if one of your thoughts processes are, if we have a better quarterback, we're a playoff team every year. Now, we don't know that for sure, but you know what else? If the Dolphins could get some home playoff games this year, over the course of the next few years, that also plays into your advantage, you know. And I want you to know too, it's cold for everybody. I don't know why people always say like the players is cold. Everybody's cold out there, bro. It's football. Like just because the opposing team would rather it not be -20. Nobody wants it to be -20. Um, and the last part to this whole thing with the mobility piece is, yeah, this is the line is banged up, but guys who are getting paid $50 million, the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, uh, the Joe Burrows, these players, Baker Mayfield, they get paid the big bucks to play through the nonsense. You
Hmm.
lose a receiver, your O line isn't great. Lamar Jackson is playing on half a hamstring right now.
Yep.
You get what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, you have to be a floor riser. And just Tua has just not been that. And so for Mike McDaniel, I think there's just proof that this is this is the situation because we're limited at quarterback. And what also is helping Mike McDaniel, he wasn't there when they drafted Tua. It
Nope.
wasn't his decision.
Nope. He had nothing to do
So
with it.
that nut had absolute what he did was he salvaged it.
Yeah, he did.
People forget that. Brian Flores was benching Tua. Do you remember that game where Brian Flores was like pointing at Tua at the bench, like you got to get in and save the team, and it looked like he was almost like berating him, like you got to grow up right now, kid. It was kind
Hmm.
of embarrassing to see for a young player at that time, and obviously you could, there's been they didn't get along with each other
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
there's some drama behind the scenes that we all know that like
yeah,
obviously Brian Flores may not be the best head coach, but there was some truth in what was going on, and he put Fitzpatrick back in, and there was that whole thing or whatever. But I mean, right now you look at it right now in the situation, like, and Mike McDaniel even brought it up earlier on the season that he was like this close to benching Tua and saying like, look, we got to evaluate every player. We got to
yep,
evaluate every player, and if every player is not playing to the standard we need, everything's up for
yep,
evaluations, everything's up for change. And so you're right. But I mean, like, you're right. Mike McDaniel was able to salvage things. So I think Mike McDaniel is connected to Tua as much as Tua is connected to Mike
facts,
McDaniel. I think that's the biggest reason why he won't lose his job in 2026, especially if he finishes strong. Speaking of
right.
which, I mean, like I said, the Dolphins are now 5-7. Let's just say they win out. Let's just say the not impossible happens, but the improbable happens, and the Dolphins beat the Jets, they beat the Steelers, they beat the Bengals, and they beat the Buccaneers and Patriots, which is their last two games of the season. Let's say 10-7. Let's just throw that scenario out there. Do you think the Dolphins make the playoffs at 10-7?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible just because how close the AFC is.
Yep.
Right? There's a lot of teams in the AFC right now who are currently playing for their football lives. The
Yep.
Dolphins, the Ravens, the Chiefs, um, and the Bengals.
Yep.
All those and the Bills as well. If they lose, they can't really lose to the Bengals, and the Bills really can't afford the loss.
I think you mean the Colts because the Bengals ain't going
Oh,
anywhere.
excuse me. Oh, yeah, excuse me.
No, yeah. So right now, let me just give you this rundown. So the Ravens are 6-6. The Steelers are 6-6. They're playing for first place in the
Yeah,
AFC North on Sunday.
right,
So
right.
whoever wins that division is going to the playoffs. The other
Going in, right,
probably not going. So, but then you got the fifth seed is the Chargers at 8-4. The sixth
right,
seed is the Colts at 8-4. The seventh seed is the Bills at 8-4. Then you
right.
got the Texans right behind that at 7-5. They're starting to look like a better team.
Exactly.
The Chiefs are 6-6. You can never count them out until it's over.
It was
And
over.
they got to win out too, though. They're in a really weird position right now too, where like if they don't win out, they're looking at a situation where they're probably not going to make it.
And
So
that'll be a disaster.
right, right. So let's just say with all that, with all those records right now, obviously everything could shake out in the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks. Things are going to get crazy.
Mhm.
10-7. Do you think the Dolphins make it?
With some help, yes.
Okay.
With some help. They need help. They need some teams to lose.
Yeah.
Like that end of the year Bills versus Jets game, it's gonna
Hmm.
be big for them for the division. And they have to win out too. They got to do their part. They can't they have a very winnable schedule to round out the year.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I know everybody's talking about the big bad Patriots, but somebody with objective eyes, go look at the last 10 teams the Patriots have played.
Hmm.
It's a joke schedule. You know what I'm saying? So these games are very winnable for the Dolphins, but they might need a little bit of help. You don't want the Chiefs to get on a heater. You don't want the Bills or the Bengals to go on a heater. I mean the
The Colts.
Ravens or the Colts to go on a heater.
Yeah.
You need the Texans to make it close. There's some things you're going to need because the Patriots are going to win the division likely. It's who are going to be the other teams that are going to get in. You know what I'm saying? So it's possible just with a little bit of help.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. But again, like the it starts with Sunday. If they don't beat the Jets
Facts.
and they drop to 9-8,
It's over.
they have less than a 1% chance right now to make the
Right.
playoffs. You lose to the Jets and you go down to 5-8, it's pretty much a wrap. There's
Yeah.
no way that they're gonna make it past that, just period.
Because then the reason why it's less than 1% is because they odds makers don't believe they'll get to 10 wins.
Yeah. And that's it's
You know what I'm saying? And that's fair.
yeah, Steelers, Jets, Bengals is one thing, but you face the Buccaneers and the Patriots, who the Patriots are going to be vying for that number one seed. They're
Right.
there right now, and they're going to be trying to keep it. So they're definitely going to be playing, and they're playing out of their minds right now. Like,
Right.
who the hell saw the Patriots being as good as they are?
I think like Cam Newton said though, they're fool's gold, James.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Fool's gold.
Look, the one team that everybody was talking about was the Colts, and look where the Colts are at now. Now they're 8-4. Now they're getting back down to reality. But right now, two
Fool's
of the
gold.
teams that are still up there, are they fool's gold? Are the Denver Broncos and New England Patriots? Are they really who they say they are? We'll see.
I promise you I'll call it now. We'll run this tape back later on. The Patriots will lose in the first round of the playoff. They're going to lose in the division.
Woo! Okay. Well,
They're going to get hit with a buzzsaw, and they're not going to lose by 3. They're going to lose by like 10 points.
let's hope that that's the Dolphins and they win their first playoff game in over 20 years, and we get to take the Patriots out, and then I'll be a
Right.
happy person.
Yeah, no, awesome. That would be crazy. That would be actually insane.
That would be insane. All right, this wraps it up for the first episode of Roundtable Dolphins. Thank you so much, John, for joining me. I'll be bringing you back on. You know your enemy more than you know your team. That's just the way it works. We've been talking Jets, Dolphins for years, for
Yeah.
the last 2 years. We know what's up.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me on, James.